Prime Minister Albanese will commemorate Anzac Day this week by walking sections of the Kokoda Track with his PNG counterpart, James Marape. One of those lucky enough to be joining the PM on this trip is News Corp cartoonist Warren Brown. I spoke to him a few days ago and asked him about how he felt to receive an invitation to walk part of the Kokoda Track for Anzac Day with the PM.
Well, Kieran, it's a shock, and it's also a shock that the Prime Minister would be inviting a cartoonist. It means that I'm probably not doing my job well enough to offend him. But look, it's such an honour, and it was, as you said, it's out of the blue. I received a phone call one night. The Prime Minister had requested, me to travel with him to New Guinea and walk the Kokoda Track. It is a fantastic honour.
Indeed, it is an absolute honour to receive the invitation, but you haven't had much notice. It's come with very short notice. Are you ready for the trip? Are you ready for the walk?
I'm not quite sure. I know the Prime Minister and I are gentlemen of a similar age. And look, I haven't been training for this at all because I've only found out only a few days ago that I'm going. But in the meantime, I'm mentally preparing myself for it because I've read so much about Kokoda and I've studied it and I was once upon a time going to walk the track and I've never actually done it before, but I hope I'm mentally prepared for it. That's what I reckon.
Now, Warren, other Prime Ministers have gone to Kokoda before Anzac Day. What significance should we put on this particular trip in terms of Prime Minister Albanese walking the track?
Well, I mean, the thing about Kokoda and the Pacific Theatre of War is that you don't have to join the dots too far to go back to probably the greatest Labor Prime Minister of all, John Curtin, who bravely stood up to Winston Churchill to bring Australian forces back from the Middle East to garrison the Pacific, I guess you'd say. The success at Kokoda and those brave boys of the 39th Battalion, I mean, they're only kids. Those guys that were up there at Ishirava holding off, crack Japanese troops. It is such an Australian story, and I understand why Labor Prime Ministers feel so drawn to the story because it does have Labor underpinnings to the whole thing. And I think it's very significant that Prime Minister Albanese is going, and it's appropriate.
Now, for someone who is interested, as you are, in the nation's military history, this is your first trip to Kokoda, as we discussed. What will this mean for you personally to be on this?
Well, it's interesting. My parents were of that amazing generation of Australians, born just after the First World War, lived through the Great Depression. My father was a World War II veteran in the Royal Australian Air Force in Bomber Command in the UK, and his brother served in the Pacific in Bougainville. And there's something about it. Both my parents have passed away. But I feel a connection for me. It's a personal pilgrimage, as a kind of strange tribute from me to them, to sort of say thank you to them and the people of their generation. It's a very personal thing for me.
Indeed, and you touched on this a bit earlier, you and the PM of a similar vintage. How do you think you, Mr Albanese, and the group will go on the track?
Well, I don't know. I can see Albo and I helping each other up and down vertical mountains. It's going to be a slog, that's for sure. Don't forget those fellas who served there in World War II. They're sort of a third of our age, which is quite extraordinary. But there's a great camaraderie that builds in these sorts of things, and I'm pretty sure at the end of it we'll all had this wonderful experience and only get to savour a bit of the hardship. I mean, we're battling to climb up a mountain. I mean, those guys back then, people were trying to kill them at the same time. So, let's put perspective on it. I think it's our tribute to those incredible, brave Australian servicemen.
Yeah, very, very good point in terms of the perspective. But no doubt there will be a beer waiting for you at the end. If so, how good will that taste?
Well, I think in World War II it was a bottle of beer and 2 bob a day. That was the payment. And then I think later it was 2 cans per man per day, perhaps. So perhaps there'll be a beer at the end of it. I bloody well hope so.
Warren Brown, thank you so much for your time. All the best for the trek. I hope it goes well. We'll chat to you when it's done.
Thanks, Kieran. Great to see you.